2022, a year of large-scale floods and landslides, which are remembered for their catastrophic consequences. This year, floods have become so powerful that even economically stable countries cannot withstand their onslaught. Australia. At the end of February 2022, disturbing reports began to arrive from the east coast of Australia. In the states of Queensland and New South Wales, entire cities were flooded. Thousands of people lost their homes, property, pets, and livelihoods. In total, Australia experienced 3 waves of historic floods in 2022. Brisbane experienced a rain bomb hit when more than a month's worth of rain fell within 3 consecutive days. The citizens of Lismore are already facing the question of relocation because due to repeated floods, it becomes pointless to restore the city. And as it turns out, the government of this fairly prosperous country is powerless in the face of large-scale climate disasters. Indeed, many residents of the affected territories still have to wait for the promised assistance from the state.
I have never had more difficulty accessing any kind of government support than I have attempting to access the rental support payment. No one should be living in a house like this, but that's our only option, short of a tent. And in the winter, mold is better than cold.
South Asia. The monsoon rains that began in May and continued throughout June led to more severe than average floods and numerous landslides in northeast India and Bangladesh. In Bangladesh, this flood was one of the most devastating in the last 122 years. Millions of people were forced to leave their homes.
Because of heavy rain, everything around us is sinking. Therefore, we don't have clean water, and we are getting many waterborne diseases. We have already lost our food and shelter, and nowadays we are struggling to find food to feed our family members. We are asking the authorities to do something to save our lives.
According to the Center for Science and Environment, in the first 9 months of 2022, extreme weather events, mainly floods and landslides, were recorded in India on 242 out of 273 days. This means that more than 88% of the time over these 9 months, the country was witnessing some kind of extreme weather event occurring in one or more of its regions. In Pakistan, the rainy season, which lasted from June to September, turned into a disaster of unprecedented proportions. Economic damage from floods is estimated at no less than $30 billion. The force of nature claimed the lives of more than 1,700 people, and more than 13,000 were injured. About 900,000 houses were destroyed, and almost 1.5 million more buildings were damaged. Months after unprecedented floods, vast areas of arable land and entire villages remain underwater. And more than 20 million Pakistanis are still in dire need of urgent care.
A lot of flood water entered our village. Our homes are submerged. Some of our relatives have died, and cattle too. We are not receiving any relief from the government.
I have seen that most of the homes, majority of the livestock, hotels, shops, markets are sinking down in water. I never seen in my life such a huge flood, such a dangerous flood, and such a dangerous raining in the entire history.
East Asia. Since May 2022, unusually early floods have hit nearly 2/3 of China's regions. In June, the flood water levels in some places exceeded 50-year high. The downpours were so heavy that, for example, on June 30th in Xinjiang City, Hunan province, half the month's amount of rain fell within just 10 minutes. According to the Ministry of Water Resources of China, for 7 years, from 2013 to 2020, the number of large-scale floods in the country increased from 9 to 21 per year. The events of 2022 show that in cities, abnormal precipitation leads to destructive floods many times faster. The infrastructure is not ready for such volumes of water. In a matter of minutes, the streets turn into raging rivers carrying cars, garbage, sewage, and industrial toxic waste. Cities of many millions are left without drinking water, electricity, and sewerage for a long time. In August, the giant metropolis of South Korea, Seoul, was hit by a water force of nature. Water quickly poured into all underground and semi-basement rooms. Subway stations, underpasses, parking lots, and even apartments have become death traps. People died from the flood right in their homes. Southeast Asia. Severe floods and landslides in Vietnam, Malaysia, and Indonesia, the Philippines, and Thailand have regularly appeared in the news throughout 2022. North America. Extreme flooding in the summer also affected many regions of the United States of America. Flooding in Montana from June 10th to 13th, caused by heavy rain and snowmelt, forced residents of Yellowstone National Park to urgently evacuate.
You can see that water levels here are flowing heavy. This Kepler Falls always flowing rather heavy, and the previous record on the Yellowstone River for water flow was 24,000 CFS, and yesterday it broke 51,000 CFS. But if that's the case, we're looking at more than double the recorded levels of water flowing in the Yellowstone River here. That is a significant increase.
And from the end of July, over the next 5 weeks, St. Louis, Eastern Kentucky, Southern Illinois, California's Death Valley, and Dallas were hit by torrential rains that were called the heaviest in the last millennium. They led to devastating, deadly floods. South America. A terrible climate catastrophe occurred in the northeast of Brazil on February 15, 2022. The city of Petrópolis was first covered by powerful flood when more than a month's rainfall fell in 6 hours, and then about 200 landslides descended in different areas. The number of victims approached 200 people. Judging by the stories of eyewitnesses, the city plunged into real chaos. Local authorities have declared a state of public disaster. In total, in 2022, Brazil experienced at least 11 major disasters caused by heavy rains. Neighboring Venezuela also experienced a string of massive floods from April to November. In early October, in Tejerías alone, deadly landslides and mud flows turned city blocks into piles of rubbish and mud. More than 50 people lost their lives. Hundreds of families were left without housing and means of subsistence.
There are people running and screaming on the floor slabs of the first floors.
And there are people buried there who have not been found. We need help.
Africa. Floods did not bypass Africa, affecting most regions of this continent. On the east coast of South Africa on April 8th, almost a year's worth of rain fell in a day, leading to one of the deadliest floods in the country in the 21st century, which claimed the lives of more than 450 people. And Nigeria became the most affected country, where the floods put 4.5 million people on the brink of survival from September to October. The force of nature completely destroyed or damaged more than 300,000 houses. Hundreds of towns were cut off from the outside world and deprived of access to food, clean water, and fuel. Europe. Europe in 2022 also faced the destructive power of large-scale floods. After a summer drought, parched and scorched soil is not able to absorb moisture, so the long-awaited rains turn into severe floods. With the onset of autumn, reports of heavy rainfall in Bulgaria, Italy, Greece, Albania, Portugal, and other countries were often accompanied by reports of devastating floods and landslides. These flash floods are usually caused by volley downpours. Water comes so fast that it does not leave people time to get saved. For example, on September 2nd in Bulgaria, intense rains led to rising levels of rivers and as a result, to severe floods in many parts of the country. The height of the floodwaters in some places reached 3 meters. People had to take refuges under roofs.
It was as if a bomb had fallen. Look, this is the kitchen where we lived.
It's a pity that no one cares. Absolutely no one came from the governance of the communities.
The situation is very complicated and horrible. I'm speechless. Was completely flooded up to the ceiling. I'm not even talking about knee-deep mud and etc. It's scary.
And the Marche region in Italy was suddenly hit by a powerful downpour on September 16th. In a couple of hours, about 400 millimeters of precipitation fell, which is almost 6 times a month's amount.
Everything happened suddenly, quickly, and it was too strong. I had gone down to the garage when there was no water yet. I managed to get the car out, but it had already been full. The other 2 were stuck downstairs, and the third one showed up later and stayed downstairs too. Nothing like this has ever happened here. Never.
It's a miracle we survived. Who could have known that the water would rush in so fast? My husband was calm. He went to get the keys to the top floor and we took shelter in the attic. But there was like a sea around the house. The fear was intense. We lost everything, including 3 cars.
It's just a disaster.
No, listen, please.
You lost everything.
It's impossible to tell. It's a disaster.
Middle East. In the last months of 2022, the countries of the Middle East experienced a merciless force of rain. Since the end of November, the water force of nature has been rampant in the largest metropolitan areas of the region: the capital of Oman, Muscat, the capital of Iraq, Baghdad, and in Saudi Arabia's holy cities of Mecca and Medina, as well as in Jeddah, the country's commercial center. The flood statistics of recent years clearly show the dangerous synchronization of these climatic phenomena. If earlier, single floods were observed simultaneously in different parts of the planet, now there are dozens and even hundreds of them. The peak of synchronization in 2022 came in the summer. From June to August, floods occurred in at least 120 countries on almost every continent. Given the increase in the frequency of abnormal precipitation around the world, people's life, especially in large cities, may become unbearable in the very near future. How much time does humanity have? You will find answers to this and other questions in the scientific report presented on November 12, 2022 at the forum Global Crisis: Our Survival is in Unity.